There have been negotiations with other developers who are interested in becoming members of the LLC and undertaking a more expansive renovation of that space, which Tim can outline for you, which is outlined in the summary that you were given. But it is a two-phase project, including it, which is mixed use, some commercial, a small amount of retail, and apartments. Part of the project would involve the admission, if you will, into the membership, or an assignment of the membership interest from the current members to the new members, because the current members feel that they don't have the wherewithal to do this level of development, but the new members would have and do have the experience to come in and do the subsequent renovations that they're talking about. It is a significant project in as much as it's in total just under $20 million for the build out. And Tim Lynn is here, who represents the new members, and he himself is one of the members. This would involve historic tax credits as well as other financing. And unless the board has an objection, I would ask Tim to outline what his partners are proposing to do.
Yeah, could I just say one thing that you missed? The original project also included the acquisition of the building adjacent. It really is two buildings. The building adjacent to what is referred to as the Dupli Graphics building, which was the Syracuse scale building. And that was part of the original project. And that building is vacant.
Great, so would you state your name, please?
Timothy Lynn, counsel for Dupli Associates, and also a part of the application. The two buildings are both historic. Dupli is the Merrill Sewell building, Nunsuch Mincemeat Factory, has its Part 1 approval from National Park Service and SHPO. The Syracuse, the Amphion Piano Player Company building is in the process of going through the historic designation. It's clear from SHPO's opinion that the building is historic. It has some difficulties regulatory-wise because of the spaghetti warehouse building. They're functionally integrated, and the neighboring property hasn't been very cooperative in trying to get the whole complex listed. So we're going through that process with SHPO and trying to get National Park Service to sign off on it. So that's in process, and that's probably the main reason that's a two-phase project, is that Dupli, the historic approvals are very easy, and that's gone forward. With the Syracuse scale building, it's much more difficult, so we're just piecing these things out. That the projects will happen based upon when National Park Service lets us go forward. So Dupli is 170,000 square feet or so. It's a mix of multiple buildings that were built over time. There's a current 5-story kind of tower in the center part of it that is occupied and has the jobs that I'm trying to get confirmation of their tenant jobs. So I'm trying to get the tenants to tell us exactly what they are and just have the best information I can. So that's where the TBD is. Okay. I've sent a questionnaire out to the tenants. We're going to get the best information that I can get for the board. And then going forward, we'll take actions to make sure that we can give information on the leases that they need to give it to us and things. I think they'll be cooperative. I just don't know how much time and effort they're going to put into filling out my questionnaire, but breaking it down by the job categories so that you have a better sense of what the jobs are that are there. They're very good jobs in the building. So it's an engineering firm, Northland Communications, and Resort Funding International. The last remaining piece of the Bennett Funding Group is in there. So it's kind of funny to have my career started with Bennett Funding Group back in 1996 when I became a lawyer, and then I stumbled upon Resort Funding International sitting there in the building at the end. So right now the rest of the building is vacant. Dupli Graphics built a more suburban location to do their print facility, and the building is left mostly vacant, except for that occupancy for those 3 tenants. The back half, the north side of the building, is a 3-story structure that's just perfect for residential conversion. It's got the layout of many of our old factory buildings that is just really appropriate. It's easy to lay out the apartments. They're going to be very dramatic, great ceiling heights, great views, great windows. And right now it's 39 apartments is what we submitted to National Park Service. We'll hopefully have our approval from National Park Service on the build-out plan in the next 3 or 4 weeks. They started their process January 24th. It generally takes about 30 days. So once we have that approval, so the 39 apartments are going there. The climbing gym has been a roaring success. They want to expand. There's a 2-story building that's part of the whole complex, 2-story portion of it that borders on Solar and whatever that little street is next to the park, Duplay Drive or something. That piece, they're going to take, currently they have a lot of the first floor of it where they have their locker rooms and a studio, and they're going to take the second floor and build it out with additional climbing walls and yoga studios and fitness and other things. So they've been going gangbusters and are very eager to expand. And then there's a old boiler room at the corner of the building by Solar that's probably about 4,000 square feet that we're currently marketing to get like a brew pub or a restaurant, that type of a user in there, that trying to get something that's going to coordinate with the other uses. So
How many square feet are they?
probably about 4,000 square feet. So the retail component is very small on the Duplay portion of the project. It's not very useful space for anything else, but when you're putting 39 apartments in, you got the climbing gym next door that's bringing large numbers of people come through. I'd like to have a tenant in there that kind of works well with the residential and the climbing gym visitors, so that there's a spot they can go to. So that's the Duplay part of it. And then Duplay has a probably 40 or 50 car parking lot, maybe a little bit more. I got to figure out, to the east of the building, going away from the Franklin Park, where you can't really see it. But if you circle around like north of Clinton or going towards Gwinnett, there's a parking lot over there. And then there's the Syracuse Scale building, which is about 60,000 square feet. There's a main building that's the old historic part of the piano. They built player pianos, and then recently, when they had the Symphoria did the Rachmaninoff series a couple months ago, they had a roll done of when Rachmaninoff actually played his concertos, and those were all manufactured there. So I found that out after the fact. So I was talking to people from Symphoria, and I said, I wish I'd known ahead of time. We could have tried to coordinate something, but in the future they're interested in doing that. They built the inner workings of player pianos were built there. It's at for the last whatever years, the Salernos were in there, probably 80, seems like forever. They had the Syracuse Scale Company there. That has really wound down. The husband died quite a few years ago. And then Mrs. Salerno held on, but it just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And now the building is completely vacant and it's starting to fail. So the roof is going. It's starting to look like the buildings I usually buy. There's water coming through. It's really falling apart. Duplay is a little different than what I normally do because the Matt family has done a very good job of preserving the building. They didn't spend any money on the inside because it was warehouse and operations. They didn't do much to the building, but they preserved it very well. So that's a good, but the scale is failing. So that really needs to have work done. My original involvement, Joe Gem and I tried to buy Syracuse Scale and rehab it because it's a beautiful historic building that's very suitable for adaptive reuse. It's a great project. The holdup on it is now the historic, so we're trying to get through that. SHPO has the same problem on a few projects across the state that have the same National Park Service problem. So I've got one that I'm working on in Utica where Senator Schumer and Jill Brand and Congressman's name up there, but they're all getting involved trying to get National Parks and see it through. So it will get through. We just don't know how long it's going to take. But that building, it's 18,000 square feet, first floor in the historic building, and a full 18,000 square foot second floor and then about a 9,000 square foot mezzanine that's kind of a third floor, but it's only part of the footprint. So our plan for that is the 18,000 square feet on the first floor of the main building is very good conversion to commercial office or some type of user like that. They have very high ceilings, be a concrete slab, and it's an easy build up. And if you've seen the Syracuse scale building, it's got massive windows, like the whole building is a giant window. So one of our hurdles are we have to replace all those windows is in a historic fashion, so we have to replicate these old giant, and they have very little framing and a whole lot of open glass surface, so it's going to be an expensive undertaking to do those windows, but it's very attractive office space. We're talking to about 3 or 4 different users that I haven't put on the forefront because the National Park Service is really our impediment at the moment to that side of the project. The second floor will be somewhere between 18 to 21 or 22 apartments, where we would take the mezzanine and incorporate that into the apartment so that they'd be a 2-story with a bedroom upstairs, and that has windows that either look out towards the north, so you can see the mall and you can see the other buildings. You can see Oak Knitting Mill from there, and like One Group and all those. And then when Baker's Health gets done, that's the whole view from that side of the apartments, and then the other half will look towards Dupli. There's a large parking lot between the 2 buildings, and then there's another parking lot to the north of Scale. So Scale probably has 150 plus spots on site. And that's our primary thing with doing this is to save Scale. We kind of ended up, there was no way to make a deal to buy just Scale, so then we just expanded our whole plan to buy both, and the Matt family were open to it because kind of how Sue said it, they were looking at doing like incremental improvements to the buildings and things like that, but they really were not prepared to undertake truly rehabbing just Dupli. I think that in the end they saw Scale as being an asset for parking. I see it as an asset for, it's a beautiful historic structure that I want to see saved. That's the gem of that neighborhood. So it'd be great to see it get restored to its former glory with all those windows and everything else. And then Scale has 2 annexes that were built over time, mostly after the piano player factory shut down. It was a box company that made boxes, and that company put 2 additions on it for shipping, and it was kind of the distribution part of it. They total about 15,000 square feet. One piece of it is somewhat structurally unsound, but probably not to the point where National Park Service would say take it down. Then there's a 15,000 or a 9,000 square foot that's got very high ceilings. It's got it's got monitors on the top, so it's got like a cap on it with windows, so there's natural light coming into the middle of it. Those 2 spaces, I think our preference would be to take down the 7,000 square foot piece and have a little bit of setback from Solar, because right now when you drive along Solar, you see that the brick wall is right up against it. If you look carefully, you'll see it is like, it looks scary, but I'm not sure it's structurally unsound in a way that, if National Park Service deems it of historic significance, we'll be rehabbing that piece of the building as well. That's kind of up in the air. Shippo didn't have a strong opinion on it when I had Julian Adams here to look at it. He wasn't sure which way it would go, because the historic use was really the Amphion piano player company. But you never know what National Park Service will say was the period of historic significance. So that's an open issue, but that space will probably be retail space. So that's a piece of Scale that will be retail. Our plans from 2 years ago, it was kind of a combination of, we have a coffee roaster setup that was ready to move in, had a brewery type thing that was ready to move in. What the use will be, I assume it's going to be something that either coordinates with the residential and the office user as kind of a service provider that integrates with them, somebody who wants to take advantage of the fact that there's now going to be hundreds of people working in that little square. That there's going to be so many people working there when Baker's Health gets done and everything else. That whole neighborhood is going to be completely transformed. It's kitty corner from the existing Baker's Health building, and it's going to be like one block or half a block away from the new construction. So as you piece your way through there, and then right across the street from it is the firehouse. that JGB has. So it all integrates very well with the whole neighborhood, and then across the street, Rapid Response has the vacant lot that I assume they're gonna do something on. So I would expect that retail space will be somebody who wants to take advantage of the fact that there's so many people working and living down there at this point, once all those projects get completed. So
Tim, excuse me, that building that you're talking about, that's the 9,500 square feet of retail that you outlined in the project description?
7,000 isn't really,
Okay.
I left it off because the way the
Understood.
building is situated, we might have to keep it, but it doesn't really have a use. So,
Yep.
I don't see it as being leasable space, so I don't know if we'll make it some kind of common area for the tenants to sit in or do something with it, but it's not very useful space. I'm not sure if they'll let us put windows in it or not. It's a strange building that's
So really, you're gonna say to your tenants, here's a dark room you can go sit in?
very high ceilings.
It comes included with your rent.
Good story.
It's about 30 feet wide, so it's almost at the point where you could use it for some kind of limited indoor parking. So we talked with one potential big tenant for the first floor that was gonna take, and then the retail footprint might shrink further because we got 18,000 square feet in the main building. It integrates right into the 9,000 foot section. So the tenant, we were like 95% done back in late 2017, early 2018, when the deal kind of fell apart on acquiring it. That tenant was gonna be 22,000 square feet, so they were gonna go creep into and do like their kitchen and break rooms and conference rooms in the annex. So the retail footprint might actually shrink. The optimal retail spot is kind of the front 5,000 square feet, right on
By the gym.
North Division, right across from JGB. That's kind of the optimal spot. You got easy in and out.
Close.
You got
Yeah,
good
GG.
signage on solar, and people can see. You get a very good presence. So that part of it's kind of up in the air because we'll do whatever National Park Service wants us to do. We're not quite sure where they're going to come down on that. They built the 9,000 square foot building. You can see where the loading docks were, and then they infilled the loading docks with concrete blocks, and then built the 7,000 foot. And it looks like that had loading docks off of it, but then they infilled that, and it's just not. I'm hoping that they'll let us do something with it because that piece covered up one giant window on the historic building. And if we were able to take the 7,000 feet off, we'd put that window back in, and it would really improve the appearance of the building from solar. When people come along back and forth, it would give it a much more historic look than the brick face that the Docks company threw up right along it. It's right on the sidewalk and the building, and it's not. So we'll see what we're gonna. Just follow whatever National Park Service wants on that. We have a very good relationship with SHPO and National Park Service, and work with them very well. And in general, they're kind of a godsend for saving buildings. Every once in a while, they have an opinion that interferes with the project. We'll just have to work around it. But that's kind of the open thing, will be that 7,000 square feet that we don't really have a use for. And then there's also a metal barn or something, I don't know what to call it, that's attached to this Amphion building and sticks out into the parking lot. I forget the dimensions of it, but it's very large and it's all clear span inside. It's a steel frame, and it's gonna take a lot of work because it's all falling apart inside. We'll probably have to put a new roof on it of some sort. But our plan will be to just keep that and use it as indoor parking, either for tenants over at Dupli or the first floor or the residential tenants at scale. That part is kind of up in the air because none of my contractors have really done a hard look at what we do about that building. But the steel frame is completely sound. It's just a question of how much does it cost to do it. And then we also don't know how National Park Service is going to view the building. SHPO did not seem at all concerned about whether we kept it or knocked it down or whatever it did with it. Then the project in the end, I think that if we didn't do this project, ultimately the goal, the result likely would have been that the Syracuse scale building would come down. And we'd end up with a parking lot that would service the Dupli building and whatever else is around there. So that's one of the reasons jump on this is that I just don't want to see that building gone. To me, it's a gem of the project. The current owners love the Dupli building and want to see it done, but I really want to see scale get done. So that's kind of the phase 3 of the project, is just getting National Park Service to let us go forward. The historic tax credits are the only way these two projects work. So I need to stay within the realms of what SHPO and National Park Service want, because that's the only way we can get these things financed, using the tax credits. There's no way these things can work otherwise. Which is also the reason I'm sitting here, is that there's no way that these projects could work without the inducements that you can offer. They're going to be very tight early years. Eventually, they'll turn into very productive parts of the neighborhood. But the cost of restoring Dupli per square foot is just enormous, and then scale is a complete redo. So it's very similar to 530 80 that I did, and the oak knitting mill over down Division Street. It needs a complete redo. It needs all new windows, all the building systems, everything has to be done. It needs a new roof. It needs everything, and that the cost of all that, with the type of rents that we get there, it's just we can't get it done without those two items. The historic is the only way it gets done, and the inducements help us get through those first few years while we ramp up and get going. Do you have any questions?
I have one question. When are you expecting the transfer, if the board came and approved it, when would you expect the transfer of the partners?
When I look at the schedule, I would expect that we would be at a February 18th meeting here, and then be on for a March 17th public hearing, and that sometime we'd like to get kicked off by June 1st with construction. So sometime between the March 17th meeting and the end of May, to have a closing where I get the financing lined up and everything else. I kind of have to, because of the nature of the project, I have to have everything lined up on day one. And Kemper want this whole deal closed tomorrow.
Does Kemper, which is Dupli, do they actually have employees in the building themselves?
They have, I know they have the guy named John that's always there.
Okay, but
I think their whole operation.
They've all relocated
they still
out.
have all their stuff there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have employees coming and going. That's one of the reasons I'm a little worried about closing, is that everybody's focused on these things, but
Yeah.
they have 40 years of stuff.
But as far as employees, when you talked about, and in the application you talked about, and this was something we really didn't address the first time around with the original Dupli application, the number of employees that were actually existing in the building, it at the time it didn't come up. And you said that, I think you said that you think there's about 90
That's
FTEs.
Our guess based upon an informal response on, and then I got to figure out as best I can from the tenants. If you're the climbing gym, it's going to be a lot of FTEs.
Right.
If it's power engineering, it's probably just a handful of part-time employees, but most of them are probably.
Yeah, but of those, if that number is right, none of those employees actually work for Dupli.
They're all.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I gave her all climbing gym, power engineering, Northland Communications, and I'm not sure if I had RFI numbers or not.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and check all my texts and emails to see. But once I started getting the information back, I just did a little questionnaire that tries to get your chart answered as far as what's currently there. Are they managerial, technical? Are they skilled? Are they unskilled? Or semi-skilled? Trying to break the jobs down by what they are. And hopefully I'll have that information back soon. Kemper's working on it, Kemper Jr. And I'll just have the best
How many
information.
tenants does that survey, did they go out to? altogether? That survey that you're using to collect that?
Resort funding, Northland Communications, CRG is, what's the climbing gym called?
Yeah, so there's some pretty sizable.
3 or 4. There's 3
Yeah,
or
so
4.
it's, yeah, but they're sizable. I'm
And
just
then-
looking at what it would take to get the survey back, time-wise.
There's four tenants in the building, and the climbing gym will be the easiest because Joe Dem started it up. He was the original general manager for it, so that information I'm pretty comfortable with. The hard part there is trying to figure out how many 8-hour people are there, how many 20-hour people are there, how many add them up and get the best number to you that I can. The others, I got rough numbers back on Northland. We have 35 people. I don't know what does that mean. Like, break it down for me. What kind of jobs are these? Are they full-time? Are they part-time? So I'm trying to get the best information I can. This is what we ran into the issue on the other one where it's hard with tenants, especially when the leases don't require them to, because these leases long predate. Even envisioning this kind of a need. So hopefully I'll get really good information back by February 18th, so you have them in front of you at that meeting at least.
So I think that would be helpful to have a clarification on, who works there and
jobs.
what it means.
Job numbers.
I also think, as you probably are aware, we can put it on the agenda, barring any complications going forward, but we typically have not closed public hearings without a full financial analysis and cost-benefit analysis, which would include the assessment and the pilot analysis. I know there's an existing pilot on the existing Dupli piece, originally from whatever that was, 2 or 3, 4 years ago. And I understand from what everybody has said, putting the 6,000 square foot restaurant in was just not achievable, which I can understand. That's a large tenant, that's a large space for a restaurant. It's a tough, you gotta have a very particular restaurateur to fill up 6,000 square feet and successfully, quickly. So I can appreciate that it was not, that part of the piece just has not been able to been affected. But I think we need an analysis that looks at, I know you're looking at extending an additional 15-year pilot. I think we will need an analysis that looks at how to keep everything within a 15-year pilot. So there's 3 going now. We would add a roughly 12 or 13 based on how the assessments come out. And, it's all dependent on the numbers, but I just don't want you to be surprised when I say that. So I think the first analysis is trying to keep it within the 15. And obviously your input will be important as to how that will all work for the completion of the project. It doesn't make any sense for us to induce projects that can't possibly be completed. So we're not interested in that kind of relationship, obviously. And the only other question that I would have on the go forward again is the apartments and the rents, and if you envision any kind of mix on the rent or just so-called straight up market rate rents, which I know are
Any affordable units in
which I know are good at the moment in Franklin Square. I don't know if you've done the analysis, if you have an idea, if not.
Right now, it's all been the market rate apartments, based upon the location and whatnot. It's really what works there. I think we'd be open to talking about other things to incorporate, but that neighborhood, we're full over it. It's not New York City rates, but it's a very healthy rental market. We're at 538. The rents are considerably lower to where a lot of our tenants, it probably is effectively affordable housing because it's, when I look at what they do for a living and everything else, we probably are just in the range of affordable housing just because of the market. Where Franklin Square, it really calls for just the market demand is there for the higher rents and everything else, and that's really what makes the project work. So that we can look at, trying to figure out how to incorporate it if it's needed, but it doesn't.
I hope we can have that conversation. I'd love to be able to bridge that.
And I'm not the right partner to have that discussion. Joe would be much better.
Yeah.
Joe Gebb would be much better versed. He's the one who's gonna manage the building, he's the one who manages the other two, and he'd be better able to speak to that.
Okay.
And there's opportunity with a phased-in project that actually helps on the can help on the financial side and on the side of potential affordable or some sort of mixed
Yeah.
income.
That's what,
housing.
just look at,
Yeah.
my considerations would be for a balance of the neighborhood. And although the market is sustainable and healthy for all of those units, therein lies the problem. If you have a neighborhood where all the market rates are at X, Y, and Z, we've excluded, unintentionally, a number of people that need accessibility to affordable housing in the city. And it's just, again, some consideration for any percentage of units. We had a great example of a project with Greg Paulus.
Matt.
Matt, I'm sorry. Last month, and Matt had done some things to take into consideration that project, and I thought it was wonderful, the outcome of there. So again, love to further that conversation at some point.
And we're open to it. We have never gone down that road.
Yeah, great.
It's just part of it will be us understanding how to do it.
Get a balance of it, yeah.
So
And my last piece, and it's just me, I went and saw the whole the properties, but I'm confused at the how scale is attached to Spaghetti Warehouse.
the wall of scale abuts it. So when you,
So it's not Scale's wall.
it's our
I
wall.
just-
We both have a wall, and that's where I've been.
Are we talking it's a is it believed that it's a co-owned wall?
No, there's two walls.
Okay.
They just abut each
I
other.
They
see.
abut each other, and
So
they were
because it
historically
abuts-
integrated because they both were the piano player factory.
Got it.
So from
Okay.
National Park Service perspective, they're one building. What we're in is a regulatory dispute with them. I've got one in Utica
That makes
that's
sense to me.
really on the table, and Gillibrand and Schumer's office have gotten very involved because it's right across the street from the new hospital.
Yeah.
So the city is very eager to see this one get approved.
That makes
But-
sense to me, because I know that the Spaghetti Warehouse building was part of the Amphion Piano Factory.
Right.
That's why they have.
Because they're historically integrated, National Park Service has, in recent times, and this is what has
Yeah.
shown no concern, they've taken a position that every owner has to sign the Part
Comply.
1 application.
Right.
And their regs don't say that. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to convince them that if I go forward with scale and I get historic tax credits, and Amphion, they wrap the building in sheet metal, it burns to the ground, or Spaghetti Warehouse, I mean, any of those things happen to that building, I could lose my credits if it's deemed to be that the damage to the neighboring
they
property
keep it
was
as okay.
of a nature that it took away the historic significance of the remaining building.
Right.
I could lose my credits, but that's my risk and
Uh-huh.
my investor's risk. That's the risk we take on every project. I did CG Meeker, that could burn to the ground, and that's a recapture. But that's the risk everybody takes. For some reason, National Park Service has taken a regulatory position, it's not in their own regs, that in effect assumes that the Spaghetti Warehouse owner is going to do something bad. And that's what we're trying to convince them is to back off. And it's caused a lot of trouble for SHPO in Buffalo and New York City, and now Utica and Syracuse. So now we were able to get the congressional delegation's attention to try to step in. And so National Park Service changed their procedure on our Utica project. We're not quite sure what it means, nor does SHPO, but instead of making us get signatures from all the other property owners, they sent out a 30-day notice for comment. So we're hoping that that's what they'll do on
This.
Syracuse scale, send out a 30-day notice period. And it's an out-of-town owner, a warehouse building. I don't know, in Utica, it's anti-government in general owners on the neighboring properties, so they look at tax credits as being unconstitutional. So it's a much more emotional issue for them.
We try not to.
So Tim, what happens after the 30-day notice period?
We don't know.
Okay.
That's the piece that
It's a whole new process.
Julian Adams and I, we got on the phone. Julian runs the whole certification process at the state. And we got on the phone and he said he's never had this happen. He had a big complex with St. Luke's Hospital down by Central Park. And St. Luke's Hospital was like 25 buildings that were at one time functionally integrated. And over time, all the properties abutting Central Park, west or east, had all been sold off and developed. And National Park Service wanted them to get every single owner of all these buildings that have long since been not functionally integrated to all sign off on it. And it kind of SHPO really wants this resolved in our favor, so we're very hopeful the Utica one will work out. If that one works out, Scale will just come along. In the meantime, we're trying to get the owners in the Spaghetti Warehouse to just sign off on it. They just haven't been communicative. We talked to their broker, made some progress there. I don't know if they want to check to do it. We just don't know what they want. Utica is much more difficult because the two of the property owners don't believe in government pretty much at all.
Got a little militia going on.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'm dealing with a little
Challenge.
different problem with Utica.
Yeah.
Here I have a feeling that if we wrote a check to them, they would sign it, but we can't get that conversation going. And it's so good for them to get, if we get this thing nominated, their building goes up in value because anybody comes look at it knows that they can't get the historic tax credits if they rehab it. But they won't talk and they live in New Jersey or something. And it makes it harder, but not as difficult as the Utica situation because that's been interesting.
Yeah.
Where people from the mayor's office have gone out multiple times and tried to have these conversations, but it's not that helpful because they don't believe in God.
So there's that.
So there's that.
Senator Schumer's office offered to get involved, and the guy from Utica was just like, I don't think that would be very helpful. So hopefully that Scale will be based upon when National Park Service gives us the go-ahead. So the timeline. To my mind, Scale is the easier project because it's so easy to envision. I walk people through it, and it's one of those times. A lot of my projects, you have to really have a lot of vision to see what it's going to look like when it's done. Scale, people walk in and they can see it. We just can't push forward until we know, will they let us take down the 7,000 square foot building? What are we doing with the windows? When can we actually start construction? It's hard to market 18,000 or 20,000 square feet to a tenant when you can't tell them when it'll be available.
Yeah.
So Dupli is ready to go, and we just have to get to closing. And this is a big part of it. Is the pilot's the key piece of this.
Okay.
There's just
So as I said, we're going to do the analysis. We're waiting for some assessment information, et cetera, as you well know.
Any
And
other question?
that will all be in for discussion.
So actually today, the only thing that,
Any other comments, questions?
yeah, today, the only thing that you would be doing would be making a recommendation to, to the board to authorize a public hearing. One of the reasons why we wanted to ask you to come in for this was because it is a little different than what we normally do, because of the fact that there's different project owners, different members of the LLC. So to give you kind of a review on it. Then, as Tim said, the normal process will be that if you agree at the board meeting, we'll authorize a public hearing. And in between that month, in between, we will provide a cost-benefit analysis. We'll have the assessment commissioner look at the project. We probably will have a finance committee meeting in March anyways, where at that point you'll be able to review the cost-benefit analysis and the pilot and any questions that you might have at that point.
I think the difference here is that instead of the current members of Dupli LLC asking the agency to terminate its relationship, we would just terminate the leases and the pilot would go away, because the new members see the potential and want to come in, they thought, well, what if we just buy the membership interest and then revise the project? So I think really that's why we're here, because had they terminated and then these guys came in, they could have come before the board with a whole new project. And instead of doing it in that manner, they decided to come before the board and say, we'd like to revise the project that's currently in place.
Which is a perfectly acceptable
Yes.
way, different way to
Right.
accomplish the goal.
Yes, but because our agreements require, if there's going to be a transfer in ownership in any way, it requires board approval, so we figured with Tim's assistance, and when he called us about what he wanted to do, we thought coming before the finance committee to explain what was happening made sense.
Great. Okay, barring any other comments or questions that anybody may have, I would entertain a motion that we recommend, the finance committee make a recommendation to the board at the next meeting that the project be approved for a public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Great.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim.
For the pilot part of it, when do you think you'd have feedback from the assessor's office and whatnot? Because that's kind of a,
Worried about that?
I'm trying to keep all the, it's a
Little worried
timing
about
thing.
that?
I'm trying to keep all the pieces moving
Right.
towards a closing.
Yeah. Next week.
But some of my project participants want to know that things are getting lined up and that we're moving, because the pilot will make it a,
Yeah. Well, I have shared, I did share your application with David Clifford, and with even a little hope that he might have some insight today, but by the time we had the final application, it was Tuesday, David was off yesterday, so there wasn't really any opportunity for him to take a close look at it. We can probably share some of it, you know, once he's come up with some numbers, you know, we can certainly share that. At the end of the day, it's going to be what the board decides, and the board will, you know, obviously need to be reviewing that and understanding it, but I would think in the next couple weeks, week or two.
because I have to convince people to spend a lot of money in order for me to close in May, or April is the date I give them, but probably May.
We would be hopeful that Dave would have a number for us by the end of next week.
Yeah.
I think Mark Lane is largely paying for a lot of this stuff, and once I can tell him that if the board were to approve the project, this is what the pilot would look like, the more certain it is that I can get him to invest. He's got $500,000 in this already, so it's kind of, every time I ask him to like send a check for the application fee, and
Right.
Joe is just so nervous about sending that one along too, so I might run it through as a disbursement just to we stop asking for checks to be paid. But if I knew that this is what the pilot will look like after we get through this process, the board has to approve it and everything else, but if the project gets approved, this is where we are, then I can start making everybody go full speed towards closing, which
Understood.
I'm sure Judy and Sue and, you know, we want the same information. So
Right.
I think, you know, there's no reason.
Share it as soon as we have
We'll
it.
get it. We're not going to make any determination until we have that information ourselves.
Right.
So we're in the same
Right.
position.
But I will share it and once I get it with
Right.
everybody.
So
I'll
we'll
start
all,
right now, 'cause I really want to get the other project participants to be 100% fully committed that we are going to close. And once they feel comfortable that we will close, we got the financing is lined up, we got the historic investor lined up. I just need that last piece that there isn't a viability issue sitting out there, and then I can tell them,
Understood.
you gotta write a check to Bruce McKnight to finish
Yep.
the permit drawings, you gotta write a
Right.
check to,
we try
I
very
hear ya.
hard not to be a barrier,
Right.
to be a support
you've
system.
always been
So,
great, because usually I can fit your timeline.
yeah.
February 18th, and then we move on, but because everybody wants to close construction started June 1st, I have so many things I need to do.
Know that priority.
Can't
Yeah.
tell them to go do it, because I can't tell them that the project is done.
Great. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for the
to come in.
time.
Thank you, Tim.
Appreciate the time very much.
Any other business, any other questions? If not, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion?
All in favor? Approved. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Have a good day, everyone.